What are they really not telling us about Fukushima? I have a scripture that I want to start off with, and I want to tell you some of the things that I've discovered about Fukushima and why it kind of seems like they kind of played it down over the last few years, and why the United States seem to be helping to play it down, so to speak. Let's start off with the scripture here. This is in Romans chapter 1, and I'm going to start at verse 28 and through verse 30. And it goes like this. It says, even as they did not like to retain Elohim, some of you out there would say God, in their knowledge, Elohim gave them over to a reprobate mind, to do those things which are not convenient, being filled with all unrighteousness, fornication, wickedness, covetousness, maliciousness, full of envy, murder, debate, deceit, malignity, whisperers, backbiters, haters of Elohim, despiteful, proud, boasters, inventors of evil things. I'm going to stop there. He said that these reprobate people would be inventors of evil things. Now we're going to talk about Fukushima. But actually, before I talk about Fukushima, I want to talk to you a little bit about Chernobyl. Back in the days, I remember when the Chernobyl incident happened in what used to be called the Soviet Union back in 1986. It was kind of scary because they were talking about this radiation cloud that was going across the world, literally through Europe and Eurasia. And back then I was roughly about, I want to say around 23 years old. And I was already afraid of this nuclear thing because a lot of you remember the Cold Wars between the United States and Russia and how they were just stockpiling missiles like crazy, you know? And all you would think about is, man, what if a nuclear attack happens? They'll destroy the whole earth because they send their missiles, we send ours, and man, destroy the whole earth. And so it kind of bothered me a little bit. And so seeing what happened in Chernobyl back in 1986, I remember how we felt back then. Everybody was looking at the news like, man, that cloud is coming across the waters, man, it's going to reach the United States. And it was just all this talk about this kind of thing, and it just really bothered me. And so when this Fukushima thing happened, and I often wondered what were the true results of Chernobyl. Okay, when Fukushima took place, this was just a few years ago, and I was really just terrified thinking about the radiation being leaked into the Pacific Ocean, thus heading toward the United States. And so I was like very concerned about this, you know. And for those of you that don't know what actually took place in Fukushima, I want to read a little bit about it here just to bring you up to par, those that aren't familiar with what took place. Okay, so the Fukushima disaster took place back in 2011, and it was actually when an earthquake that happened in off of the coast of Japan, and it caused a tsunami. And this tsunami came in and just totally wrecked a nuclear plant. And so basically a lot of nuclear waste, nuclear fuel leaked into the waters, basically. And that's just summing it up. For those of you that want a little more information on it, you can easily research it on Google. But basically, what really got my attention was when I started to do some research about the animals that have been affected by Fukushima and some of the wildlife. There's an article that's titled, "At Chernobyl and Fukushima, radioactivity has seriously harmed wildlife." Okay, I'm gonna read this to you. The largest nuclear disaster in history occurred 30 years ago at Chernobyl nuclear power plant in what was then the Soviet Union. The meltdown, explosions, and nuclear fire that burned for 10 days injected enormous quantities of radioactivity into the atmosphere and contaminated vast areas of Europe and Eurasia. The International Atomic Energy Agency estimates that Chernobyl released 400 times more radioactivity into the atmosphere than the bomb dropped on Hiroshima in 1945. Are you hearing this? Man, this is incredible. Let's go on. I want to finish reading this. It says, radioactivity from Chernobyl can still be detected in some food products today. And in parts of Central, Eastern, and Northern Europe, many animals, plants, and mushrooms still contain so much radioactivity that they are unsafe for human consumption. Wow. Now, why haven't we been hearing about this, especially if it's in food and animals and plants that people can't eat? Wow. So you see, man, with his evil inventions, because he has such a reprobate mind against the Elohim of the heavens, against Yahuwah, until they are just creating these weapons of mass destruction because they claim they want to protect themselves from their neighbors. But as you see, what happens if something goes wrong, or if one of these plants, an earthquake or something happens to one of these plants, or there's an explosion? There's another article I want to share with you. This article is titled, "Study Now Reveals the Impact of Fukushima Catastrophe on Plants and Animals." And listen to this one. Now, a series of papers published in the Journal of Heredity, scientists are starting to reveal the damaging effects on several non-human organisms. For one of the papers, researchers set out to look at population changes in birds, butterflies, and various insect species, and then compare this information with previous data contained from the Chernobyl disaster. While limited number of studies have been conducted, it is evident that all of the animals investigated suffered reduced population size in the Chernobyl exclusion zone. Birds, butterflies, and cicadas experienced population declines in Fukushima as a result of radiation exposure. However, other groups such as dragonflies and bees did not seem to be affected. Furthermore, they also observe effects on some species such as abnormal feathers on barn swallows. So basically, they're admitting that there have been some effects on plant life and animals that have been affected by this Fukushima disaster. Now, I've got some photos here I want to show you. I want you to look at these photos. Take a look at some of these photos. This is a butterfly mutation. This is a cat mutation. A fish mutation. Now, what is that on the side? A tumor? A fish that appears to be growing two heads. Another fish with what appears to be some type of tumors or something around his mouth. Now this is sad. Look at this poor lamb. Lamb mutation. Mutilated looking animals. This is a cougar. This is a rabbit mutation. And let's look at some of the food. I'm gonna look at this one image of a tomato. Would you eat this tomato? Look at how horrible this thing look. Would you actually cut open this and have this on your salad? This is ridiculous. This is the kind of stuff that this radiation has done to some of the wildlife and plants in the areas of these disasters. And now this stuff has been spreading. Now I got some more articles I want to share with you. Now, this article is titled Fukushima Radiation in United States West Coast Marine Life. Okay, now listen to this one. In March 2011, in association with the Great Tohoku earthquake and resultant tsunami, there was an accident at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear plant on the east coast of Japan. This accident released the radionuclides cesium-134 CS and 137 CS into the ocean next to the plant, exposing marine life to radioactive materials. These images are model simulations using dye on a long-term disposal of 137 CS released into the Pacific Ocean off Fukushima following the Daiichi nuclear accident. 43 days, 365 days later, and 1,412 days after the accident. While many of the exposed marine organisms remain around Japan, a number of these species migrate and swim across the North Pacific to the west coast of North America. So these affected fish that swam, or should I say that were over in the area of Fukushima, there are a good number of these fish that swim across the ocean and ended up in the areas off the coast of California and other states along the west coast. Interesting, huh? It makes sense then, because I remember years ago I saw a guy did a video on YouTube, and they talked about how they came across the Pacific Ocean and they didn't see any live fish in the water at all during the entire trip. And they said finally when they did see a whale, this whale had a huge tumor on his side. This was a video that was on YouTube. And I thought that was strange, so that prompted me to do a little more research, which I came across another article that really scared me when I saw this article. And when I say scared, I'm talking about knowing what's happening to the planet. The article is titled, "The Ocean is Dying, Marine and Animal Life Die-Offs, California Coast." Pacific Ocean is turning into a desert. Oh my, are you hearing this? Okay. Now, this article has been published for some time now. It was actually published in, 2015. Okay. And it says, it was the dying cry of Charlton Heston in the creepy 1973 film Soylent Green. Soylent Green. Twisty word. And it could resemble our desperate near future. The ocean is dying, by all accounts, and if so, the food supply along with it. The causes are numerous and overlapping. The massive numbers of wild animal populations are dying as a result of it. Natural disasters, natural causes in the environment are partly to blame. So too are the corporations of man. The effects of Fukushima, unleashing untold levels of radiation into the ocean and into Pacific shores. The cumulative effect of modern chemicals and agricultural waste tainting the water and disturbing reproduction. Now, I remember when I first saw this article, and it talked about the number of dead animals that were showing up at the bottom of the ocean when they went down, and they took pictures at the bottom of the ocean. I said, oh my goodness, they have really messed up this planet. With all this nuclear waste, back to the scripture, right? Reprobate minds creating evil inventions. It's in the scriptures. They're reprobate. The people that create this stuff are reprobate. They don't think about what if there's an accident, what is this stuff gonna do? Now, this is kind of disturbing because we all have to think carefully about the food we eat. And the stuff that we order and we get from stores, man, is some of this stuff coming from overseas, right? So now there's another article I want you to look at too. Here's this one here. I had a chance to look at their video, and it was kind of disturbing because it's about Fukushima. And get this here, listen to this article. It's titled, "After 6 years, we finally found the melted uranium at Fukushima. And now that we've seen it, we can make plans to retrieve it." What? You mean 6 years that went by and y'all haven't even found that stuff yet? You just not finding it? So I decided, well, so you mean telling this stuff is just in the ocean like this and they haven't had a chance to clean this stuff up? Now watch this. Watch this stuff still in the ocean. This is the article. On March 11th, 2011, the tsunami caused by the Tohoku earthquake prompted a nuclear disaster at Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant in Okuma. Fukushima, now the first time a crew has been able to capture images of the melted uranium fuel present in its ruined Unit 3 reactor. The incident caused 3 of the 6 nuclear reactors to melt down. When this occurred, their uranium fuel rods liquefied and melted through layers of steel and concrete. This stuff melted through steel and concrete, right? See, this is radiation. This made it difficult for us this made it difficult for those investigating the accident after the fact to determine where the uranium had ended up. The rods were cooled when the plant workers pumped water into the reactor buildings, but there was no way to know how far they had traveled. It took 3 days for 4 engineers to pilot a small drone known as the Mini Manbo through the corridors of the flooded buildings to find the uranium. Previous attempts to use robots for the purpose had not been successful. You know why they were not successful? Because the radiation destroyed the robots. Now listen to this. But the new model was built from materials that are resistant to radiation and equipped with a sensor that allowed it to avoid particular previous areas. This breakthrough is being touted as the turning point for the Japanese government's efforts to respond to the disaster. As the cleanup process begins in earnest, many are taking it as a sign that the crisis has finally come to an end. Until now, we didn't know exactly where the fuel was or what it looked like, said Kimoto, a general manager of the company that operated the plant's nuclear power arm. According to the report from the New York Times, now that we've seen it, we can make plans to recover it. Are you serious? Now that we've seen it, you can make plans to recover it? See, I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to tell you what I'm thinking here, right? And just hear me out on this, right? It seemed like when this incident happened, it seemed like the news has kind of played it down over the years, as if there's anything still going on in the Pacific Ocean or over in Japan. Almost played it down as if, yeah, you can forget about it now. Let's just get on with life. And I used to wonder, man, why is Russia and the United States kind of seem like they're trying to play it down, knowing how bad this catastrophe was, right? Knowing how bad this accident was, but they would play it down. So I began to think, and I said, well, I get now why they playing it down. I'm gonna show you why. Look at this image here. Do you see this image? Do you know what this is? This is an image of all the operating commercial nuclear power reactors that's in the United States alone. Wow. No wonder they're kind of play it down a little bit. No wonder. Because of the fact that they have these plants everywhere too, and they don't want to cause people to panic. Because they say, man, if people realize they got these plants sitting right next door to them, they'll be afraid and maybe they'll protest or maybe they'll come against what's going on here, right? These nuclear power plants are everywhere. Look at this, you know? As a matter of fact, there are currently more than 400 nuclear reactors in operation around the world, with 65 new constructions of nuclear plants. Wow. This is what's going on. And another 165 plan to be created. Now, with all of this nuclear power that they're creating, you got to know that this is just like the scripture said. Reprobate men, inventors of evil things. Wow. That's the word. That's what it said, right? This is the society we live in. This is the government we all live under, right? This is the government. The scripture says they were inventors of evil things. Reprobate inventors of evil things. Now, this tells me that we better fast forward quick our lives into trying to create our own food, raise our own animals, raise your own chickens. Chickens are so simple to raise until it's incredible. You can raise your own chickens, and if you have them fenced off where can't no cats get to them or whatever, these chickens will lay their own eggs. You can feed them, they'll lay eggs for you. You can hatch those eggs, let them hatch the eggs, they'll have more chickens, and it would be incredible. You don't even have to buy chickens anymore, right? You won't even have to buy chicken anymore when you want some chicken. You cook your own chicken, right? And other fowl, right? Man, we got to get to the point where we understand the need of doing this. And I understand it's hard for some of us. You might not be able to raise some animals, but I'm gonna tell you right now, when I lived in Detroit, we lived on a very small parcel of land. You know how the homes are in Detroit, they're right next to each other, only a driveway separating each home. Okay, let me say something to you. We had a garden, and when I think about the size of that yard, even though it was small, we grew a lot of food in that garden. Okay, and not only that, I remember a neighbor that lived down the street from us had chickens. In Detroit, she was from the South. She had chickens and she had greens growing in her front yard like they were plants around the front yard. She had a vegetable garden in her backyard, and she had chickens. Yeah, she was raising chickens, you know. And whenever I remember this too, whenever she got her food or meat, she always had cow and animals that were raised by someone. So she'd get cows that were raised, or even she ate pig too. So you know, she would have a pig, get a whole pig, and have them slaughtered. I remember one time I went down to her house and I'm looking at this big chicken. This is in Detroit, and she had a half a pig slaughtered on the basement floor, cut up the middle, right there. I'm sitting there looking like I can't believe what I'm seeing as a young man, you know. But hey, some people, they do what they gotta do, right? Now, I'm not saying, I'm not saying go and eat any pigs, right? I'm just talking about how some people, this lady who lived in Detroit on a very small lot of land, and she would get animals. She would have people with their own farms would raise animals, and she had these animals killed and slaughtered. She'd take the meat and freeze it, and this is what she was doing. She had a huge garden in her backyard and had chickens, and so I'm trying to say we got to get to that point, because looking at all of this FUKUSHlMA disaster, when is the next disaster going to take place? I mean, listen to this, right? What already took place in Russia, the Soviet Union, what that took place in Japan, how soon before one take place in China, right? How soon before one take place in Israel? Or the United States, for that matter. How soon before one take place in one of these other places where a plant explodes or something bad happens, or an earthquake or a tsunami or something causes another plant to release radiation into the areas? Wow. We got to think about this stuff, right? We got to think about it. But I wanted to share this with you all, because after I seen some of the animals and had a chance to read some of these articles, and I am going to put the links so you can look at some of these links, but after I had a chance to look at some of this stuff, all I can do was shake my head and say, Father, Yah, whew, I get now when the scripture says, except the days be shortened, there shall no flesh be saved. Y'all got to shorten these days, because these reprobate people are going to destroy the planet, and us all on it if they get enough time to. Wow. On that note, I'm going to say, be in Yah, stay in Yah, walk in the Spirit, be led of the Spirit, and He will give you peace in spite of all of this stuff. He will give you peace, and He's going to work things out for us people, right? On that note, I'm going to say, Shalom.